Well, it's week 2, Bill, and excited?
Very excited, very good.
Now, we're looking at John's Gospel. We're now about to look at John 13, and that sort of classic, it's not in the other Gospels, is it? The foot washing of Jesus and the command to love one another in light of it and follow the pattern of Jesus on whom he's given all authority. Do you just want to get to the heart of it for us?
Yeah. John 13 is really interesting passage because, as you say, we get this extended moment. In the other Gospels, Jesus has a last meal, but John actually doesn't have the Passover meal, but he has kind of the rest of the stuff that's happening, I think. And he does this really interesting thing at the very beginning. Some people think this might be a sign. I think it's what we would call a prophetic sign act. So it's not miraculous, but it's meant to be a really strong visual illustration of a point that's being made that the disciples don't forget. And it's one of the most famous incidents in John's Gospel, the whole foot washing thing. We know the Catholic Church, churches have done this kind of stuff as they picked it up.
As part of their service.
As part of their service, yeah. Now, it would be traditional at a meal for someone to wash people's feet. It was dusty, they wore sandals, and you'd have a slave or a servant doing that. But when they come into this meal, it's obviously been not formally arranged, so someone's got to do it. And the surprise is that Jesus gets up, undresses, takes off his clothes probably down to whatever he was wearing around his groin, and then he kneels down and starts washing the disciples' feet.
Now, they're not sitting at tables, are they?
They're not sitting at tables. They're kind of, they would recline, they'd be back on an elbow with the food in the middle, and they could take the food.
Middle Eastern
all that
style.
Stuff. Middle Eastern style.
Yeah.
But their feet...
hummus, tabbouleh,
all that kind of thing. All that, their feet were disgusting, And so Jesus is washing their feet. And so this becomes for John, or for Jesus, and therefore for John and for us, a really key moment in what's coming up, because we're into the second half of the gospel. Jesus is moving towards his death, and John is now going to explain what that death is going to achieve and what it means in the chapters leading up to it. Previously, in some of the signs, you might have noticed that sometimes there'll be a sign, then an explanation. This one, I think we get an extended explanation and then the final sign. And the foot washing is absolutely pivotal. Keep talking about it? Yeah. Okay. So he takes off his clothes, he washes their feet. The inappropriateness of it is explained to us by Peter. He says, Peter, are you going to wash my feet? Jesus says, you don't realise what I'm doing, but later you'll understand. And I take it that means after the cross. In other words, that's the link that's there. Peter says, you're not going to wash my feet. And Jesus says, unless you wash me, you'll have no part of me. And so I think this is a great illustration to preachers here of how to get maximum application out of a single illustration, because I reckon Jesus applies this in about 4 ways, right? So the first one is...
I'm taking notes here, Bill.
That's right. First one is, unless I wash you, you'll have no part of me. So who's doing the serving here? Well, Jesus is the servant. He's serving the disciples, and he's saying, unless you're served by me, the king, you actually can't be part of my kingdom. And so,
counterintuitive, isn't it?
Counterintuitive, yeah. And usually, back in the day when I first preached this, you want to jump to the end where it says, go and do likewise. And so the application becomes, love others as Jesus loved you. But the first application is, be loved by Jesus as he has loved you, which is kind of impossible. How do you
like
do
1
that?
John 4, God is, this is love. It's not that we love God, it's that he first loved us and gave his son.
And gave his son. Yeah. So that's the first thing, that it's a death, the death and the foot washing shows us Jesus is serving us. Secondly, because of the whole water thing, it's a cleansing. So whatever is going to happen on the cross is going to be akin to the cleansing that's on the cross. And then the third thing, it's an example of humility and how we ought to serve one another. So I think this really dovetails with another part of the Bible, Philippians 2, with a hymn where Jesus comes to earth, strips himself of his humanity, his divinity, becomes human unto the point of death. And here you kind of get that literally happening. And I wonder whether Paul or whoever wrote that, if it was a hymn, is maybe meditating on the foot washing as Jesus strips himself, humbles himself as a servant, and then gives himself on a cross.
It captures the humility of it, especially because he begins with, all authority has been given to me.
That's where it starts.
Starting from that declaration,
totally.
it's all
what would you do with absolute power? Well, he serves.
That's right. That's a lesson for us all.
That's right. Yeah.
Excellent. And then from that, love one another in light of that.
Yep, absolutely. And that love commandment will come up a couple of times through the rest of the chapters, but it's grounded in the action of the cross, and that's where 1 John goes, right?
Bill, very helpful, brother. Thank you. And brothers and sisters, hey, what a great passage to actually spend time thinking about, meditating, not just on the day, actually all week, as we, especially in light of the fact that Good Friday and Easter Sunday are coming. It's kind of like the calendar's actually following, because from actually Lazarus to the cross is like 6 days, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, barely. Yeah, that's right.
Barely that. So we're actually in the last week of Jesus' life.
Yep.
Excellent. And in the upper room. Have a great time, friends.